The night my mother went into emergency surgery, my husband told me to stay with her and left with another woman. Not later, not secretly, that same night. "She needs you," he said, grabbing his keys. "I'll be back in a couple of days." A couple of days, like hospitals worked on his schedule, like fear waited politely. I stood in the hallway outside the operating room, still in the clothes I had rushed out in, watching him walk away without looking back. My father was sitting 2 chairs down, silent, hands clenched together. "He'll come back," he said quietly. I didn't answer, because we both knew he wouldn't. The surgery took hours, longer than expected. Every time the doors opened, my chest tightened. Every time they closed, it got worse. No calls, no messages, nothing from him. By morning, the doctor came out, and everything changed. "I'm sorry." That was all I heard. The rest didn't matter. I don't remember sitting down. I don't remember crying. I just remember the silence, the kind that doesn't leave. The funeral passed like a blur, people talking, hands on my shoulder, words I didn't hear. My husband didn't come. Of course he didn't. But someone else did, a man I didn't recognize. He waited until everyone started leaving. Then he stepped closer and handed me an envelope. "Your mother wanted you to have this," he said. I looked at it. Simple, sealed, my name written in her handwriting. I didn't open it right away, because something about it felt final. But when I did that same evening, everything changed. I opened the envelope alone, sitting on the edge of my bed, still in black, the house too quiet without her voice filling it. Inside, a letter. And something heavier. Official. Legal. My hands slowed without me realizing it. Her handwriting came first. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it out of surgery. I stopped for a second, closed my eyes, then kept going. I know you. You'll stay strong. You'll stay quiet. You'll put everyone else first. Don't. That word hit harder than anything. Don't. There are things you don't know about your marriage, about the man you trust. My fingers tightened around the page. I didn't want to believe it at first, but I saw enough. Saw what? I turned the page. The house is not in his name. It never was. I made sure of that. My breath caught. Everything connected to this property is under a separate structure, protected, for you. I looked at the second document. Property deed, ownership, my name, not his, never his. If anything happens to me, you don't stay where you're not respected. Her words weren't emotional. They were clear. Prepared, like she knew, like she planned for this moment. My phone buzzed suddenly. His name. I stared at it. Didn't answer, because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for him to come back. I was understanding why he left so easily. I folded the letter slowly, placed it back in the envelope, and stood up. Outside, the house felt different, not empty. Clear, because this wasn't about grief anymore. It was about truth, and I had just found it. He came back that evening, like nothing had happened. Suitcase in one hand, phone in the other, no urgency, no hesitation, no apology. "I couldn't get a signal where I was," he said the moment he walked in. "How did it go?"
My name is Arlette, and I'm
How did it
29
go?
years old.
I
The
stood
smell
in
of
the living
roasted
room,
turkey
the
still
envelope
makes my
still in
jaw
my
tighten.
hand.
Because that
"She
was the
didn't
night
make
my
it,"
brother stood
I
up
said.
at
He
Thanksgiving
paused,
and
just
announced
for a
our
second,
parents had
then
secretly
nodded
given him the
once.
company.
"I'm
I built,
sorry."
and that I was getting
Flat.
nothing.
Practice.
We were seated around
Like
my
he'd said
parents'
it
long
before
oak
and
table,
moved on.
the same
"And the
one where I'd
funeral?"
once
he
balanced
asked,
invoices and
already setting his
laptops
bag
while
down.
everyone
"It's
else
over."
watched football.
Another
And the
nod.
candles
"That's
flickered
good,"
like they knew
he
something
replied.
awful was coming.
"You should rest."
My brother cleared his throat with that
Rest.
practiced confidence.
Like I
He
just
always
finished
wore like a
something
tailored
small.
suit,
Like
lifted
losing
his
my mother
glass,
was an appointment.
and said it loudly enough
I
to
watched
pin
him
every
move around the
conversation to the
house.
wall.
Comfortable.
Before we eat,
Familiar.
I just
Like
want to
nothing
thank
had
Mom and
shifted.
Dad for
Like
believing
nothing had
in
been
me and officially
exposed.
handing me the company.
"Where were you?"
And then,
I asked.
with a smile that cut,
He
he
didn't
added,
stop.
Arlette won't be involved
"Business
anymore.
trip."
I felt heat
"With
rise
who?"
behind my eyes.
That made him look at
Not
me.
because I was surprised.
Sharp.
Betrayal
Annoyed.
has a smell too.
"Does it matter?"
Metallic
he
and
said.
familiar,
"I
but
told
because
you,
the
I
timing
had
was
things to
surgical,
handle. I held
chosen
his
to
gaze.
humiliate.
"Yes,"
My parents
I
didn't
said
look at me.
quietly.
Not
"It
even when he
matters."
said I was getting nothing.
Silence. Then
as
he
if the word
sighed,
itself were a verdict
losing
already
patience.
stamped.
You're emotional
I built
right
that company
now,
from a
he
borrowed
said.
desk in a drafty
Let's not do
studio,
this.
nights powered by cheap
Let's
coffee and stubborn
not
hope,
do
while my brother was
this.
finding himself on my
I
dime.
almost smiled.
And now he was standing
because
there
that
like a
sentence had
hero in a
always
story
worked
he'd never
before,
written.
just not
I thought of
anymore.
the first
I
client.
know about the house.
I landed by
I said.
promising a
That stopped
turnaround.
him.
I barely
completely.
knew how to deliver.
His expression shifted.
The contracts
Not
I negotiated
confusion,
with
not
hands
concern,
shaking under the table.
calculation.
The payroll weeks when
What
I
about
paid
it?
my team before
He asked
myself because
carefully.
I couldn't
didn't
bear to
raise
let
my
them down.
voice. Didn't
And all of it
explain
flashed
everything.
through me
I just said
as
the
my
one
mother
thing
dabbed
that
her lips
mattered.
with a napkin
It's
and my
not
father
yours.
studied.
And
The
for
grain of the
first
wood
time
as if
since
it
he
could
walked
absolve
in,
him.
He didn't have an
My
answer
brother
ready.
kept talking,
For a second,
embellishing the narrative,
he said nothing.
saying our parents
Then
wanted
he
stability,
laughed.
wanted a
Not
real
loud,
leader,
not genuine,
wanted someone who could take it to
dismissive.
the next level.
Of course it's mine.
And I could hear
he
the air in the
said.
room thin,
We're married.
forks hovering.
We're married. Like
Relatives
that
holding their
explained
breath.
everything. Like
Because
that
family
erased
dinners
ownership.
have a way of
Like that
becoming
gave him
trials without
access.
juries. My aunt's
I
eyes
didn't
flicked
move.
toward me. My cousin coughed,
It's not.
and the silence begged
I
me to play
repeated.
my part,
He watched
to
me
shrink,
now.
to swallow
Closer.
it. Instead,
Careful.
I took a sip of
What are you
wine,
talking about?
slow enough to
He
feel the
asked.
cool glass
I
against
placed
my
the
lips,
document on the table
and I
between
tasted the
us.
courage I'd been
Didn't
hoarding
slide
for
it.
years,
Didn't push it.
because that was the
Just
moment the words on
said
the
it there.
thumbnail of my life
Read it.
formed,
He didn't
themselves
reach for it
exactly
right
as they would
away.
later be
That was the
repeated.
first sign.
My
Because
brother stood up
confident
at
people
Thanksgiving
don't
and
hesitate.
announced our parents had secretly given him the
Eventually,
company
he picked it
I
up.
built and that
His
I was
eyes
getting
moved
nothing.
across the page.
So I took a sip
Fast
of
at
wine,
first,
looked at
then
my dad
slower.
and said,
Then
should I
he
tell
read
them
it
now,
again.
or do you want
That's
to?
when his posture
The question
changed.
landed like a dropped
Subtle,
plate,
but real.
shattering the careful
What is
story
this?
my brother was
He
telling.
asked.
And for the
You tell
first
me.
time that night, my
His
father
jaw
looked at me.
tightened.
His eyes held
This
the
isn't
panic of a
valid.
man who knows a locked
It is.
drawer has just been rattled.
This doesn't make
He
sense.
stammered something
he
about
said.
timing,
Why would your
about
mother?
family, about
Because she
gratitude.
knew.
But the room
That
had
stopped
shifted
him
toward me.
completely.
Gravity recalibrated.
Silence filled
and
the
I could
room.
feel years of
Not
being
emotional,
the quiet one peel away.
strategic.
I remembered the
Because now
emails I'd
he was
saved.
thinking.
The
not
signatures I'd insisted
reacting.
on when my parents
And
pushed me to keep it
that's when I
informal.
saw it clearly.
The clauses I'd
He had
added late
never
at
left
night
the
because I
house.
trusted paper
He had
more than
always
promises.
counted on it.
I remembered
You
my
hid
brother's
this?
name missing
He
from the
asked. I didn't
documents when
know,
it mattered
I
and
replied.
mysteriously
That
appearing
part was
when it
true.
didn't.
He looked
And
at
I
me
understood
again.
then that their
Different
plan
this
relied
time.
on my silence
Not
more
like
than his speech.
A wife.
I didn't raise
Like a
my voice,
problem.
didn't need to.
Okay.
Because
he
calm
said
can be
slowly.
louder than
We can
shouting.
Figure this out.
And I let the
Figure
pause
this
stretch
out.
until
I
even the
almost
turkey
smiled
seemed to
because
cool.
that tone wasn't
Then I
concern.
asked again
It
gently,
was adjustment.
should I
Control
tell them
shifting
now,
directions.
or do you want
but
to?
this time,
My
it
brother's
wasn't his
smile
to
wavered.
control.
The
We'll
room
sort this
leaned
out
in,
together, he
and
said.
in that held
Placing
breath,
the
I
document
felt
back
something
on the table
unfamiliar.
like it was something
Bloom
temporary.
control,
like
because
it could
the
be
truth,
undone. I looked
once
at him.
invited, has a
No,
way of
I
walking
said.
in without
that word
asking
landed
permission.
heavier than anything
And I knew that
else,
whatever
because
happened
I had
next,
never said it to him
the
like that
story would no
before.
longer
He
be told
blinked.
about me
What do you
without me in the
mean?
room.
No.
The room stayed frozen
I mean, it's
after my
already
question.
sorted.
And in that
Silence.
silence, I
Then his
finally
tone
understood
changed.
how
Not
much
calm
power
anymore.
comes from simply
Tighter.
refusing to be
You're
erased.
overreacting.
My dad opened his
he
mouth,
said.
closed
You just
it,
lost your mother.
then tried to laugh
This
it
isn't
off,
the time
but the
to make
laugh cracked.
decisions.
And my brother
There it
shifted
was
his
again.
weight like a man
Emotion
realizing the ground under
used
him
as a
wasn't
weakness.
solid anymore.
Timing used
While I set my
as
glass down
leverage.
carefully and told
I held
them
his gaze.
there were things
You
everyone
left,
deserved to hear.
I said.
Because
He
this wasn't
exhaled
just about hurt
sharply.
feelings.
I told
it was
you,
about truth.
I had work.
I explained
You
how the
left me there,
company
I continued,
hadn't been a
alone,
family
while
project
she
the way
was
they
in
like to
surgery.
say.
He didn't deny
But something
it.
I had
He
started
just
alone at
shifted.
23 with a loan I
Don't
repaid
twist
myself.
this,
How
he
every
said.
early
You
contract
told me to
listed
go.
me as founder
I
and
almost
sole owner.
laughed, because
How my
that
parents
wasn't
had
even
only
close
come
to
in
the
later,
truth. But that's
offering
how he
advice
worked.
that slowly
Rewrite,
turned into pressure.
redirect,
And
control.
how my brother's
And
sudden
who were you with?
promotion
I
had happened
asked.
behind
That
my
did
back
it.
while
The pause.
I was negotiating
Small,
our biggest
but real.
expansion.
Does it matter?
I watched
He
faces
said
change
again.
as details
Yes.
replaced assumptions,
This time I didn't soften
and I
it.
could feel
I
the
didn't lower
narrative
my
slipping
voice.
from my
I
brother's
just stood
grip as
there
relatives.
and waited. Because
Leaned
now he
forward,
was the one without
asking
control.
questions he
And
couldn't
for the
answer.
first time,
My
he
mother
knew
tried
it.
to interrupt,
I'm not doing this
saying
right
this
now,
wasn't the
he said
place,
finally.
that Thanksgiving
need
was
time to
about
think.
togetherness.
No,
But I pointed out,
I replied.
still calm,
I
still
needed
steady,
you to stay.
that they had chosen this place.
That ended it.
When they announced I
Not
was getting
loudly,
nothing,
not dramatically,
and that togetherness
just
built on lies was just a
clearly.
prettier word
And in
for
that
control.
moment, something between us didn't
My
crack.
brother snapped that
It
I was
closed.
exaggerating,
He didn't leave right away.
that the company needed
That
a
would have been
stronger
too
presence,
easy. Instead,
and that he was only
he
stepping
tried
up.
something else.
And that's when I slid the
Soft
folder I
voice,
brought,
slower
unopened
tone,
until that moment, across the
controlled.
table toward my dad,
Listen,
telling him
said,
he could either
stepping
explain the
closer.
signatures
You're
himself or
overwhelmed.
let me do it.
Anyone would
The folder
be.
contained
Let's
copies
not
of
make this bigger
incorporation
than it
papers,
is.
equity
bigger than it
agreements and
is.
emails
Like
acknowledging my
betrayal had a
sole
size
ownership.
limit.
And as my
Like
dad
absence
flipped
could
through
be
them,
measured
his
and
shoulders
excused.
sagged,
I
the
didn't
weight
step
of
back,
proof
but
bending
I
him
didn't meet
forward
him
while
halfway either.
my brother's
What about
confidence
her?
drained
I
into
asked.
anger.
He
Someone
frowned.
gasped
Who?
when they
The
realized
woman
my
you were
brother
with.
had been named.
Silence.
Interim CEO
That
without
same
legal
silence.
authority,
The one
and
that
another
tells the
relative
truth
murmured that
before
this looked
words
bad.
do. You're imagining
Very
things,
bad.
Ian.
I didn't
Chalana.
relish their
There
discomfort.
it was. Not
But
denial,
I also didn't soften the
dismissal,
truth.
cleaner, easier,
I said I had
safer
discovered the
for
transfer
him.
attempt
I nodded
weeks earlier,
slowly, then reached
had
into
already
my
consulted
bag and placed my
counsel,
phone on the table.
and had decided to wait
Unlocked,
until
screen
Thanksgiving
open,
only
a
because
photo, not
I hoped
knowing,
they'd
sent
choose
to me,
honesty before
time-stamped
spectacle.
clear. Him
But since
and
they
her.
hadn't, I
Not
was
at
done
work,
protecting
not on a
feelings at the
trip.
cost of my future.
Laughing.
The argument
Close.
erupted then.
Too close.
Voices
His eyes
overlapping,
dropped to the
accusations
screen,
flying,
stayed there
my
longer
brother
than he
insisting he'd been
expected.
promised
Then
everything
he
since
straightened.
childhood,
This
my
isn't what
parents
it looks
pleading
like.
that they were just
Of
trying
course
to
it
keep
wasn't.
peace, and
It
me
never
repeating
is.
again and again
I
that
didn't
peace without
argue,
fairness is
didn't
just
explain,
silence
didn't
enforced.
raise my voice,
Eventually my
because
uncle
the
stood
truth
and told
doesn't need
everyone to
help.
stop,
It just needs
reminding them that
space.
facts
You
mattered
should
more than
leave, I
pride.
said.
And in that
That
pause
surprised
my
him.
dad finally
What?
admitted
You
what
heard
he'd
me.
tried to hide,
Now he stepped back.
that the company
not
was legally
confidently,
mine,
carefully,
that any
like
attempt
the
to give it
ground
away
had
would
changed
fail,
under him.
and
You're
that they'd hoped
serious?
pressure would make
He
me
asked.
comply.
I held his gaze.
Hearing it out loud
Yes.
felt like a door
And for
closing
the
behind
first
me.
time since he
Final
walked back
and
into this
freeing,
house,
and I stood,
he realized something
thanked everyone
simple.
for listening,
This wasn't a conversation
and said I was
anymore.
leaving
It
because
was
the
an
rest
ending.
could be
He
handled
left
through
that
lawyers.
night. Not
Not
loudly,
leftovers.
not
I
dramatically.
walked out into the cold
just
night with my coat half
quieter
buttoned,
than he came.
heart racing
No
but
slammed
spine
door,
straight.
no
And
last
for the first
argument,
time in years,
because
I
he
felt
understood
light,
something most
like I'd
people
set down a
don't.
burden I didn't
When
know I was
control
carrying.
is gone, noise
The weeks that
doesn't bring it
followed were
back.
messy.
The house
Angry
felt
messages,
different after
forced
he left.
apologies,
Not
and eventually
empty.
silence.
Clear.
But the outcome was clear. My brother
I walked
lost his
through it
illusion of
slowly,
inheritance.
my footsteps
My parents
softer
lost the
than
leverage
usual,
they'd
like I was
relied on,
seeing everything
and I
for
gained
the
something
first
more
time.
valuable than an
My mother's
apology,
voice
which was
echoed in
clarity.
my head.
The
You
company
don't stay
stabilized
where
under
you're not
leadership chosen for
respected.
competence,
She hadn't
not
said
blood,
it directly,
and I learned that
but she
family
didn't need
loyalty
to.
doesn't mean accepting
She
betrayal as
prepared me
tradition.
instead.
When people ask me
I
now
went
if I
into the
regret
bedroom,
speaking up at that
opened the
table,
closet,
I
and
think
looked
back
at
to the
his
candles,
side.
the turkey,
Clothes still there,
the way my voice didn't
shoes
shake
lined
when
up,
I asked,
everything
should
in
I tell them
place,
now,
like he expected
or
to
do you
come
want
back.
to? And I
picked up my
smiled because that
phone,
question changed
not
everything.
to call him,
Not
to
just for
call
me, but for
someone
anyone
else.
watching,
Hi,
who's been told to be
I said
quiet
when
for the
line
sake of peace.
connected. I need
If
to
this
start
story
the
resonated
process.
with you,
The
if
lawyer
you've ever
didn't
been
ask
pushed
questions.
aside,
He didn't need
underestimated,
to.
or told you were
Understood,
getting
he
nothing
replied.
after
We'll
giving
proceed
everything,
immediately.
then
Clean,
stay with this
simple,
channel.
final.
Subscribe
I ended
now
the
so you
call
don't
and
miss
set the
more
phone
real,
down. No
powerful
shaking,
stories
no
about
second
standing up,
thoughts.
reclaiming
Because
your
this wasn't
worth,
anger.
and
It
watching
wasn't
the truth
revenge. It
finally
was
take the seat
correction.
it deserves
Days
at the
later,
table.
he started calling. First calm, then impatient, then different. Sarah, can we talk? I looked at the screen. Didn't answer. Because the conversation he wanted was already over, and for the first time I wasn't waiting for closure. I had already created it. The envelope didn't just change the house, it changed everything connected to it. By the end of the week, the paperwork was done. Ownership confirmed. Access restricted. Names removed. His, gone, clean, final. He didn't understand at first. That was the part that stood out. He thought this was emotional. Temporary, something that could be talked through, until the notice arrived. Then, everything shifted. That same evening, he showed up at the door, not alone, her, standing slightly behind him. No confidence now, no smile, just tension. He didn't wait. I made a mistake, he said immediately. I wasn't thinking clearly. Not, I'm sorry. A mistake. Something accidental. Something fixable. I didn't open the door fully. Just enough. For what? I asked. He hesitated, because now words mattered. For leaving, he said. For everything. Everything. Still vague, still controlled. Then she spoke. Quiet. Careful. We didn't know, she said. About the house. About any of it. There it was. The truth hiding underneath everything else. Not regret, not guilt, awareness. They knew now. And suddenly everything changed. He stepped closer. Please, he said. We can fix this. I looked at both of them, then at the space between us. The distance. The clarity. You're already outside, I said calmly, and closed the door. Because the moment they saw that envelope was the moment they lost access to everything, not just the house, me.